Saludos amigos, los invitamos a escuchar La Mesa Redonda, The Round Table, donde discutimos los temas del día, hablando de política, educación y otros temas, locales, regionales y mundiales, por USA la Radio. Señores oyentes de USA la Media, estamos aquí de nuevo con su programa La Mesa Redonda, The Round Table, desde el corazón de la ciudad del amor fraternal. Les habla Fernando Mendez. Christian Lacey controlando el tablero. El día después, la mañana después de las elecciones, nos acompaña nuestro amigo, el ilustre líder de la comunidad, don Darío Belot.
¿Cómo están? Buenos días. Gracias por lo de ilustre. Y ha sido una larga noche, ¿verdad?
Ilustre, tú eres muy ilustre.
Déjame tomar un café y después te digo lo de ilustre. Después de una larga noche.
Ajá. Sí, yo creo que nadie durmió. Yo apenas dormí un par de horas. Eso es lo que pasa.
Sí, fue una noche muy interesante porque creo que empezamos, Fernando, antes del conteo, ¿verdad? De las 7, 8 de la noche que arranca, con las expectativas y los polls para un candidato. Eso rápidamente cambió durante la noche. Los pronósticos para el otro candidato, Donald Trump. Y esta mañana, en la última hora, yo te diría, antes de tu programa, hay nuevas expectativas y las probabilidades dan ahora muy cerca, pero Biden, con una expectativa de 271 electores. Está muy cambiante y muy interesante esta elección. Me hace acordar mucho a la de, tú recuerdas, a la de 2000 con Bush y Al Gore, donde Florida fue fundamental.
And yes, I remember that. Recuerdo eso, los famosos hanging chads. Hanging chads, que era una parte de la balota que quedaba colgando cuando salía de la computadora. Entonces, en muchos casos las invalidaron por eso. Bueno, pero aquí estamos. Y el problema es que, bueno, hay muchos problemas. En muchas partes no se ha comenzado a contar todavía. No sé, no recuerdo ahorita en cuál estado dijeron que no empezaron a contar, sino hasta mañana jueves. Aquí estamos hoy día miércoles, todavía se están contando votos. Ahora, Pensilvania podría ser la clave, could be the key, puede ser la clave de este estado en los resultados de las elecciones, pero si Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, they go to Biden, Pennsylvania may not need to be on Biden's column.
Y Nevada. Esos son los 4 estados. Exactamente, que le darían a él los 271, a Joe Biden, 271 electores. En Nevada, ese era un estado que fue para Hillary en el 2016. Biden lleva una ventaja, pero está muy, muy parejo. En Arizona sería un estado que Biden estaría haciendo un flip, que los pronósticos lo llevan a él unos 6, 7 puntos adelante, y es muy probable que haga el flip. Los medios no lo quieren declarar como un estado para Biden específicamente por eso, porque fue un estado de Trump hace 4 años y todavía están contando. Y los dos claves que sí las encuestas lo daban a Biden, que es Michigan y Wisconsin. Esos 2 estados, las encuestas iniciales lo daban muy favorable a Biden. Empezaron el conteo.
Biden team, ellos esperaban esto iba a ser así, una carrera muy cerrada, ¿no?
Sin duda, sí, pero el conteo a la noche Trump lo daban muy a favor en Michigan, Wisconsin y también en Pensilvania, pero durante la noche y esta mañana, Michigan y Wisconsin volvieron a ser zonas de Biden por un margen muy pequeño. Y el tema acá vuelve a que estas elecciones son muy especiales, estamos en una pandemia y la discusión es el mail-in ballot, en el cual si eso se confirma que los números dan para Biden en mail-in ballot, es muy probable que la campaña Trump mande abogados y que ya lo está haciendo a todos esos estados, incluyendo Pensilvania.
Ellos esperaban esto. Yo creo que no esperaban que estuviera tan cerrado el asunto, pero está bien fuerte. Los números, como tú mencionaste, el 2016, los números son similares, ¿no? La ventaja que lleva Biden en muchas partes es la misma ventaja que llevaba Hillary Clinton. La diferencia en los votos es muy similar. Lo que ha ocurrido aquí ahora es que the blue line, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and what's the other one? Wisconsin. The blue line, the Democrats defended the last time, and then Trump took it. That's what they want to recover. They want to recover those states: Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. Ohio is gone, ¿no? Ohio se perdió ya.
Sí, Ohio de entrada fue muy favorable a Trump. Entraron votos de mail anoche y lo abrieron otra vez. Una vez que lo habían otorgado para Trump, lo reabrieron como una oportunidad para Biden, pero igualmente la diferencia sigue siendo significativa y el conteo de votos está casi por encima, creo que del 90%. O sea, Ohio es muy probable que termine para Trump y ya varios medios de comunicación lo llamaron para Trump. El escenario, una vez más, es y también igualmente North Carolina y Georgia, que son los dos estados que todavía se están contando. Los dos están favorables a Trump y es probable que terminen para Trump. Igualmente con ese escenario, esto lo deja muy, muy cerca a Biden con una pequeña ventaja si mantiene los estados una vez más de Wisconsin, Michigan, Arizona y Nevada, dándole Alaska, que todavía no se nombró, North Carolina y Georgia para Trump. Después, si ese es el escenario, Biden no necesitaría Pensilvania, porque Biden llegaría a los 271 votos con este escenario.
Sí. Pero Georgia, falta contar los votos de Atlanta y los suburbios de Atlanta, ¿no? Es lo que por ahí es donde andaba.
Sí, falta mucho llegar que de mailing votes, que son muy favorables tal vez a los demócratas. Igualmente la diferencia es grande en Georgia, igualmente que en Pensilvania. Pensilvania es el estado que vamos a abrir todavía a recibir votos hasta el viernes por la decisión de la Corte Suprema. Muchos de esos mailing votes son democráticos, básicamente de Filadelfia, que ha sido el centro de discusión, los suburbios de Filadelfia y Allegheny County en Pittsburgh. Pero igualmente la diferencia es abrumadora para Trump en los números actuales, 600,000 votos en una cantidad de casi 5 millones de votos. O sea, el gap para cerrar, aunque se espera que esos números de mailing votos sean en mayoría demócratas, el número para pasar a Trump yo creo que la diferencia es inalcanzable.
Está muy fuerte, sí. Biden recibió mucha ayuda por el voto por correo y el voto temprano en las grandes ciudades como Filadelfia, Atlanta, Detroit. Pero ahí es donde el conteo está atrasado, entonces no está completo el panorama.
Y es donde el equipo de Trump y sus abogados están enfocándose, y creo que es donde van a hacer county by county, donde van a hacer básicamente un claim. Y su objetivo es, si no se decide a nivel local, que se lleve a la Corte Suprema de Justicia, porque ellos no pueden pedir directamente a la Corte Suprema.
Okay, here we go. And this will be a good time to play. There is a clip that we have of Mr. Trump saying that he's going directly to the Supreme Court. So I don't know if can we play it now, Christian?
This is a fraud on the American public. This is an embarrassment to our country. We were getting ready to win this election. Frankly, we did win this election. We did win this election. So our goal now is to ensure the integrity for the good of this nation. This is a very big moment. This is a major fraud in our nation. We want the law to be used in a proper manner. So we'll be going to the U.S. Supreme Court. We want all voting to stop. We don't want them to find any ballots at 4 o'clock in the morning and add them to the list, okay? It's a very sad, it's a very sad moment. To me, this is a very sad moment, and we will win this, and we, as far as I'm concerned, we already have won it. So I just want to thank you, and
he declared victory, basically.
There's so many wrongs in that comment. I have a list of things that are wrong. So the important point there is that he cannot directly challenge in the Supreme Court.
No, what is he going to go to the Supreme Court? What is he going to say?
That's not the way that the justice system works. And I don't know if you know about it, but basically he has to challenge per county, which then is going to go to the Supreme Court of each state. And if the state cannot decide, then it goes to the Supreme Court, which is the Trump campaign wishes que vayan a la Corte Suprema Nacional, porque es a donde él tiene la mayoría grande de conservadores y de gente de Trump.
Sí, por eso esa era la urgencia de poner a la juez Barrett ahí en la Corte Suprema, ¿no?
Sí, la diferencia es 6-3, si no me equivoco, en cuanto a la cantidad. O sea, si va a la Corte Suprema a las elecciones finales, es muy claro que van a juzgar a favor de Trump. La pregunta es si se puede llegar a estados como Arizona, Nevada, Michigan y Wisconsin que se determinen para Biden, y después que Pensilvania con suerte sea tal vez un estado que quede muy parejo y la batalla sea legal sea solamente en Pensilvania. En ese escenario en realidad no importa, porque ya con los otros estados Biden ya tiene los 270 electores.
Bueno, vamos a ver, hay que estar atentos. Esto podría cambiar en cualquier momento. Lo que yo no entiendo es el voto hispano en la Florida. ¿Qué pasó?
Sí, y lamentablemente no se esperó en Miami-Dade County la cantidad de hispanos que se esperaban salir a votar, ni tampoco a votar por el Partido Demócrata. Hay dos fuerzas muy fuertes. Florida es muy especial en cuanto a los latinos, y tú lo sabes bien, que son los cubanos y también venezolanos, que tienen y que piensan que los demócratas tienen una tendencia socialista e izquierdista, que no es el caso. Estamos en los Estados Unidos de América. Biden es un candidato y una persona de años que demostró siendo del centro, moderado, aunque demócrata y del centro. Ellos se basan en la parte de la izquierda del Partido Demócrata, que sí es un porcentaje de los votantes demócratas, pero sin duda no es la campaña de Biden en ese sentido, ni tampoco es él y su gente de trabajo y su plan ser socialista y de izquierda. Y eso es muy claro, porque vivimos en un país capitalista y sin duda no es el objetivo de Biden ni el plan de Biden.
Exacto, pero el problema, yo estaba mirando los comentaristas, particularmente de CNN y de MSNBC, y ahí estaba este señor que había sido el líder del Partido Republicano hace una década, y ahora es un comentarista en contra de Trump y trabaja en CNN. Y él lo que dijo, trabaja en MSNBC, y él dijo que el problema en la Florida, en muchos casos, fue que cuando ellos acusaron, el Partido Republicano acusó a Biden los demócratas de ir hacia la izquierda, al socialismo, no le respondieron a esa acusación como debían haberlo hecho. Debían estar en la radio, en la tele respondiendo a eso. Aquí nadie es socialista.
Ya. Y es un buen punto. Yo creo que también la campaña de Biden tiene el mismo punto con Trump, no condemning white supremacists y otros puntos que se lo acusan a Trump, y él no lo deniega. Yo creo que es una campaña y una estrategia política en cierta manera. Pero si uno se va a la plataforma política del plan de Joe Biden, no hay nada socialista ahí. Se habla de sus impuestos. Los impuestos son básicamente para la gente y los comercios, la gente que tiene ingresos de más de $400,000. Sí hay una repartición de riqueza en ese sentido que Biden está promocionando. Pero las empresas y los individuos están ganando muchísimo dinero, y se vio bien claro durante esta pandemia. Las compañías como Amazon, compañías de Internet, haciendo un profit muy, muy grande, y mucha gente quedándose sin trabajo. Entonces sí veo una distribución de riqueza. Yo creo que esto vuelve a la base del republicano y democrático en cuanto a la libertad, en cuanto a la economía. Y este es el principal punto republicano. Debemos dejar libremente que las empresas ganen dinero y disponer con ese dinero, que reinviertan en sus empresas y pongan más trabajadores, o que básicamente se lo queden en los bolsillos de los dueños. Yo creo que esa es la política republicana. La demócrata dice, tú puedes ganar dinero, pero hasta cierto punto, hasta ese punto tú tienes que pagar más impuestos y darlo a la gente que lo necesita. Entonces, yo creo que eso es una gran diferencia que los republicanos no aceptan y no están de acuerdo con la política demócrata, y creen que eso es, de cierta manera, socialismo.
Sí, sobre todo porque, bueno, han permitido que a Biden se le asocie con Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez y con Bernie Sanders, y algunos de los aspectos más radicales de esa campaña de Bernie Sanders.
Sin duda. Esos son gentes del partido. Bernie Sanders no es gente del partido, él es independiente, te recuerdo, pero también del lado republicano se lo asocian con el Tea Party y el Far Right también, ¿verdad? Que esa gente bien extremista de derecha son parte del Partido Republicano, pero no son la base del Partido Republicano, al igual que Bernie Sanders y Ocasio-Cortez no son la base del Partido Demócrata, son parte influyente en cierta manera, pero no la base.
Exacto, pero ahorita, mira, esto no importa quién gane, esta elección ha demostrado que el país está dividido exactamente, y que la otra mitad odia a la otra mitad.
Es muy triste, y creo que esa es la conclusión. Tú lo dijiste muy bien, creo que esa es la conclusión de esta elección. Y si nos vamos a los números de 2016, ¿no? Hillary con Trump, y también en el 2000 de Bush con Gore, el país está dividido, y en esta elección, por ejemplo, casi no hay flip states desde el 2016. Se mantuvo casi la misma cantidad de estados azules y rojos sin hacer
Exacto.
Grandes cambios. La gente ya está decidida. Yo vi una encuesta muy interesante que solamente el 3% de los votantes decidieron su voto en la última semana. Eso quiere decir que el republicano es republicano y el demócrata es demócrata, independientemente de lo que pase, de lo que digan los candidatos y de lo que pongan en la plataforma política los candidatos. Trump hizo todo lo posible para insultar, criticar, mentir, y así todo a los republicanos, no solamente su base, pero sino la gran mayoría de los republicanos igualmente lo votaron.
Yeah, so I think Martin Pratt has joined us. Hello, Martin.
Sí.
So what's up?
Apparently, Maine, Nevada, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Arizona. That's what's up.
That's what's up, huh?
You know where it's not up? Miami-Dade County's not up.
And Pennsylvania is not up.
Yeah, but yeah, it's true. It's true.
We may not need it. We may not need it because at the beginning of the program, actually, we did a new scenario that having a holding Wisconsin, Michigan, Arizona, and Nevada, we're getting 271, one over. So I think we have a path now that I think an hour ago or during the night we didn't have. So now I think the campaigns are, changing their strategy, and I think Trump campaign is very, very nervous and activating their attorneys and lawyers to all these states, basically challenge what is the mail ballot. That was a very possible scenario, and we are not surprised about it.
Did you see Ben Shapiro's tweet saying that this was stupid for him to come out and say what he said this morning at 2 a.m. in the morning, where most people were asleep except for us nerds, like news nerds, political nerds. So I even Fox, I immediately turned to Fox while he was doing his press conference, and they went in on him, saying that the election is over, he won, and it's like they're like, we don't know why he did that. That's just not. They actually, Fox was actually a decent. It was almost like a CNN. They were, somewhat okay, and I was like, wow. So I don't think. I think he, and then Pence kind of tried to walk it back a little bit. I don't know if he's going to really come out and say that he wanted to go to the Supreme Court, because I think he's going to look at it and say he doesn't like to lose, so he's not going to go somewhere where he can possibly.
Well, right, but at this point, remember, he feels very confident because he has a majority in the Supreme Court with conservatives.
They gave Pennsylvania. You saw what he said. He didn't call it bad. He called it strange. Very strange decision the Supreme Court gave to Pennsylvania.
Yeah, right.
So he wasn't happy with that one. I don't think that maybe he is confident that they would give it to him, but it would be against the Constitution, and I think everybody who tells him is going to tell him like, no.
I agree. Let me share information and data about something that everybody cares about. That is the stock market.
Yes, right. Yes.
Specifically, Trump's speech, and actually the stock market is really high, which is up between 3% and 4% this morning, which is very surprising because we don't have a president yet.
Right.
And this is going to be a bubble, in the next few days, not only on the counting, but also on the different courts of the different counties.
Well, at least until Friday.
But when he came out with what he said, do you see what the futures did, right? The futures market went way down. After his speech, the futures market went true. And Fox talked about that. Fox was, I felt like they were talking to him. Like, what are you doing? You see, the market is not, they went from the states haven't been called yet to immediately, the market is not appreciative of this, Donald.
Because the markets don't like uncertainty. They don't like a person that wake up in the morning, sit on the toilet with a tweet and change the whole economy in the next day. So that's not. But again, the market is not an indication of anything. It's not what the real people, the worker, the ones that go wake up at 6 o'clock every morning, go to work. It's not a measure of anything. How the way that Trump has been,
I'm a little afraid for the country, even if Biden wins, because apparently, Hispanics in Florida and some smattering of black men feel this guy is okay, along with a lot of rural white people. So that's a real weird correlation to have to deal with. Black guys that I don't know where, I guess Michigan, no, not Michigan. Well, Michigan, like Atlanta actually came out. I'm gonna have to tip my hat off to Atlanta, which I never do. I can't stand Atlanta, but apparently they really came out in force, way over what they've ever done. Atlanta is like kind of like Philly when it comes to voter participation, and they talk a good game, but they never show up. They showed up.
The the question if it's, all those extra votes in Atlanta is going to be enough for Georgia, right?
Right. I don't think so. I think he's got. I think it. Well, this is the thing to me. This is going to be a really close scenario, and I think that's good for voter participation. So I can leave Atlanta out the list of places where I can talk to these dumb black men and be like, "Why are you voting for this?" I feel like black men are voting for machismo.
Yeah.
The people not, and again, it's going to be 14 or 17%. It's not going to be this huge amount of black men, but it's more than what he got in 2016, and it made a difference, right? Or possibly could have made a difference, but apparently. But
yeah, sorry. I was looking at very interesting exit polls yesterday, Fernando, that about what's the number one issue or top 5 issues of Republicans for this election, and the economy, of course, for Republicans, it was close to 60% of the Republicans, they vote because of economy, which basically we are in a recession. But what surprised me, number 5 was the pandemic, right? So there's a number of topics, and the pandemic was not only 5% of the Republican vote influenced by the pandemic. For the Democrats, actually, the number 1 by 35% was the racial equality. And number 2 was the pandemic, which is, makes a lot of sense. Number 5 was economy on the Democratic side. So that you can tell you how polarized are the 2 groups and what are the main topics that the people is voting or care about at the moment to get into the polling side.
I saw an exit poll for Hispanics, and the pandemia was not even close. It was like number 3 or 4. So,
what about Texas? Anybody see anything come out of Texas? Because Texas was a shocker. I didn't see that coming.
Yeah. Well,
I guess Dario
and I were talking about the Hispanic vote, and we don't understand what's happening exactly. We know the Democrats did not respond quickly enough to the socialist accusation, and that was one factor. But what? A lot of Hispanics I have spoken to recently, many of them who are voting for Trump said it's the pocketbook, it's the economy.
Well, here's the thing I wanted to say about the America Ferrera and also Eva Longoria. They came. Remember, I told you they came on TV 2 months ago and said, you can't show up 2 months before. They said this in September. You can't show up in September to help the Hispanics to get out the vote. It's just not going to work. So they formed their own PAC, their own organization, which I thought was weird because I thought La Raza, which is not La Raza anymore, but I forgot what's new name. But I thought La Raza was the.
Yeah. So different efforts. One is a PAC. Unidos is basically a group of La Raza, a group of nonprofit organization, mainly leading, advocacy for Latinos. In Philadelphia, we form a coalition called COLAFI, a coalition of Latino voters, basically take them out, to vote, all with the same intention because our vote. But Fernando said a very important point, that is the Latinos actually are voting to one single issue. They don't look at, several other issues like the Democrats, either white or even I would say African American. So if that issue is the economy, you're going to have a number of Latinos voting probably for Republican, or if there's something about abortion, they're going to look at, the Republican side. But again, Hillary got around 62 to 65% of the Latino vote. We're looking very close how Biden is hopefully beating that number. One thing I have to tell you, I was very surprised to see and expected a flip was Iowa, that went for Trump, a Republican, after Trump said a number of times in his event how stupid the people of Iowa. So how you can get that insurance still vote for the guy? I'm like shocked.
It's interesting.
That sort of proves his point, right? That proves his point.
Right. And so it's on a psychological level. Does America really need a therapy session? Because it feels like the abusive woman, and she's taking the abuse and then not reporting the abusive husband, and doesn't want to press charges.
Exactly. Yeah. Very sad. But I think it's back to Fernando's point. The country is completely divided. And I really hope for peace, after this counting. I know that Trump is not going to give up from now to even, January. So the question is, how tough this is going to get.
Yeah.
So what's interesting is, I forget who was it. Somebody on the Senate came out immediately when he said that. I forget who the person was. But I think that Mitch McConnell is tired, and he may be experiencing some medical conditions for his hands. A lot of theories about that, but I think he's tired. I think Lindsey Graham is tired, and so I think that they're going to be like, for the sake of the country, there's going to be like, for the sake of the country, just go. Like, we're good for our jobs. You lost yours.
But that was one of the big surprises. I mean, I'm talking about stupid voters. I mean, who voted for Lindsey Graham again to come to the Senate?
South Carolina, though, historically, I mean, it's one of the places. I grew up in New Jersey, but the summers I would spend in North Carolina. And my cousins and my uncles would take me to South Carolina, where it was we lived not too far from the border, and they would leave me in the store. And they would leave me in the store because they wanted me to experience what it was like to be in South Carolina and never come to South Carolina. And so
they left you at the store and gave you no forwarding address?
Well, they would leave me in the store. I would be by myself, and I go to the counter and I'd say, "Sir," and they'd be like, "Boy, what you want?" And I'm like, and I, from North New Jersey, so I'm like, "Boy, who we talking to?" I don't know. And so my uncle would appear all of a sudden. He'd be like, "Oh, sorry, he just lost. Sorry." And he would say, "See, that's why you never come to South Carolina." And they would do it every summer, like literally his clockwork. So I got to be about 14, and I was like, "I'm not going with you." They're like, "What?" "I'm not going with you anywhere. I'm staying right here in the house. I'm not going anywhere with you. I'm not going to South Carolina." So they can say, "Good, you learned a lesson." And that was the lesson. Like, South Carolina is very, 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 very racist.
Fernando has some updated votes, a number if you want to get the last number now at 10:30 a.m. So we have in Michigan, Biden 49.3%, Trump 49.1%. There is a 10,000 votes difference with 90% of the votes counted. Okay. If you remember, Trump won Michigan for 10 or 15,000 votes in 2016. Right. Now it's exactly the opposite.
Wisconsin, like 15,000 votes.
Yeah, less than that actually. Wisconsin, with 97% of the votes in, Biden has a lead of 21,000 votes. It's a 49.4% versus a 48.8%. This tells you how close they are. Again, Trump won Wisconsin and Michigan by a small margin back in 2016. Now both are Biden for a very small margin. And that, I think, is going to determine the election.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think so. Well, here's a more generic question for all of us. There's an interesting couple of articles in BBC. And one of them is democracy itself at stake? And so how much is democracy itself now at stake in the US, not just the occupant in the White House? The UK's former Foreign Secretary, Jeremy Hunt, thinks it is. Democracy is threatened everywhere because of what is happening right here. Well, we saw Trump. He wants to be a dictator. We know that. And he's not alone.
Apparently, a lot of the country wants him to be a dictator. So that's another issue. So that's right. Democracy is under attack, and that should be the headline. Yeah. Where are the true patriots? Hashtag.
Yes. Fernando, I have to excuse myself. I have to get back to a pandemic situation and a positive case that we're having around but I wish you all the best. And,
okay. Thank you. Thank you for joining. Go Biden.
Go Biden. Take care, guys.
All right.
Okay, man. Yeah, Martin, this whole issue of democracy, and not just like the whole concept of democracy, but look what Trump did to all the institutions in this country, from the intelligence services to the Justice Department to the Supreme Court to judges
He
that
just ripped it apart. We
how
got to put it
many?
all back together.
Right, he sort of tore apart every institution,
Or
and
or Fernando, did he expose the fissions, the the little cracks that we thought were cracks, or we thought, but they're really very old institutions, and they needed to be they needed more women, they needed more people of color, their thinking needed to be updated. What Bill Barr is doing to Justice Department is making that I know of, every lawyer that is a U.S. attorney or someone rethink their whole career. So it's like, and they want to fight against the Justice Department now. So like, I mean, maybe that was something that was, necessary in the universe for Americans to be able to really see how vulnerable we really are to institutions we think traditionally are sources of access and sources of bastions of legacy that would stand for something. And they look now, look at how easy it is to manipulate them.
well, one thing that with Trump being in power and doing what he was doing, the U.S. right now, this election, we had the highest turnout in more than a century, and so that has complicated the results. That's why we are going to have some delays in reporting, and who knows what's going to happen here. But going back to this whole undermining our institutions, uh, it would take more than a decade, I think, for us to rebuild internal damage that he did to our faith in the FBI, our faith in the intelligence services, our faith in the Justice Department. He has undermined all those, the faith that we had in that. And
I would just stop you right there and say Black folks didn't have faith in those. So so that's the interesting part of this, is that there are two Americas, right? And white folks that are in rural America are saying kind of similar to that's where Black men who voted for Trump and rural Americans are kind of on the same page. Like, this is not our country. This is not a country where we could get a fair shake.
Yeah,
Trump.
But still, I mean, Blacks and Hispanics, we were and have been a minority. I mean, the majority of the population believed in all these institutions, and Trump took care of sort of destroying our faith in them. Anybody who I think for the most part, most rational human beings here had faith in that the law of the land.
But look at Michael Moore's movies, from Columbine to 9/11 Fahrenheit to even the movie about Sicko, about the healthcare. I don't know, Fernando, did most America? I think this is really showing that apparently 50% or more of the country did not believe what you say, because Michael Moore has been making those movies for almost 20 some years. And that was middle of America. That the people that watch, and even saying it, when he go on the different shows, that look, my movies appeal to the Trump voter, because they were complaining for almost 20 some years. We're not, Main Street was not getting a fair shake. I'm not saying they are now. Yeah. I'm just saying that I don't know that the institution you're talking about, the faith, I think was eroded a long time ago. Maybe even in after Reagan.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you mentioned Michael Moore, because I mean, he's actually more of he has exposed some of the weaknesses of our economy, of the system, of the
right.
But the trouble with him and his voice, like Bernie Sanders and people like that, is that because they make so much noise that they create an equally strong reaction from the other side, from people who don't agree with them, and they don't have the kind of credibility that we would say, adopt Sanders' ideas, no matter how sound they seem. We cannot have a free education and free healthcare. So those are extremes. I mean, and that's the problem with Michael Moore also, is that he's always been sort of depicting the country in a sort of a cartoonish way of how the evil of the institutions, the evil of the people in power, and all that, and look at us poor people, how much we suffer and how much we don't have any power. And you're right, to a large extent that has been true, but that is not the consensus. I don't think the population has always believed in that. We have
not always.
We have faith. I mean, maybe
think
you
about,
don't, because you like to contradict everything that I say. But
I want
to
get your opinion on something. Think about the damage that Gore Bush did to the country about faith. I mean, I don't think that I think it'd be great for a sociologist to dig into what you just said, and in juxtaposition, did it start in 2000 with that? I mean, people still call it. I'm one of those people who still call it a stolen election.
Well, look, in retrospect, I have to admit, and most people with common sense will say, we're sorry that it wasn't Al Gore who won that, because Bush got us into a war with Iraq, and anyway, it was a complete disaster in so many ways. But what that election also proved is that the system works. That whatever the decision the Supreme Court made at that point was a sound one to stop the uncertainty.
I disagree. Scalia said he would not recuse himself. If Scalia had recused himself, I believe it would have been a different decision.
Yeah. Well, right. I agree.
So that's what I'm saying, Fernando. That's why I'm going back, and not so much trying to be disagreeable, but I'm thinking about what you're saying, and I'm thinking about my emotional feeling, and I definitely stopped believing in the Supreme Court at that moment when he got on his TV and he said what he said, and he said, "Yeah, I just played golf with the guy. Look, I just played golf with his father. I love it. Like, basically, I love his dad. I'm not. You kidding me?" And I remember being in New York and listening to the public radio station in New York, and people, the specific station, those white folks were calling that station, Fernando, they were crying. I had never heard white people cry on the radio. They were literally crying. It was devastating to a lot. So I don't know that, at least a lot of liberals will say, that was in New York and I was listening to Pacifica Radio, so that was liberal station. But my point is, I think a lot of that distrust happened then, and then Black folks finally, the CIA, or not, they didn't admit it, but we know now the CIA was selling crack and selling cocaine, bringing it in so that drug dealers could sell it, so they could fund different things, which we always believed, but we only had hints of it, of the truth. And so I think that whole scenario there too, that started from the Black community, at least, they distrusted the CIA, any kind of law enforcement institution you're talking about. Black people distrusted years ago, but definitely other things that happened since the 80s helped us to get there.
Well, what you just mentioned, I don't think it's general knowledge. I don't think the public in general knows what you just said, but that's sort of inside the ballpark information that is not known by the general public. The CIA.
Fernando, there was 3 movies about it.
In the Black community, I don't know. That's part of our.
There was three blockbuster movies about it.
Well, but I mean, maybe that's more familiar to the Black community than to the rest of us.
Right, and I don't think it can. Honestly, I would say I don't think that would affect the Hispanic community or the Asian community or the Asian Indian community or even the white rural community. I don't think they would. I'm not trying to be funny or anything, but it's like that's not a priority. Like, we know from exit polls, no one was talking in the Hispanic community about kids in cages. Like, that was not an issue. So I totally agree with you that it may not be. I agree with. I'm saying that even if they did know about it, it probably wouldn't have affected their vote or affected their way they looked at the government.
Right. I don't think so either. But I'll continue with this topic of how Trump has destroyed what we had, the establishment, no matter how many weaknesses there were in our society.
I think he's exposed it. I think more of it is it's exposed now, and you can't disagree.
Right, true. But I don't know. That's not the same thing in foreign policy, for instance. He took us out of the Paris Agreement on climate. I mean, I don't know that has anything to do with what you're talking about. And that kind of damage would take forever to repair.
Well, I think that I'll say this. I worked for an eco-friendly environmental justice reporting outlet for 2 years. And as I went around the country, and I remember, I don't know if you remember this, when Van Jones was fired on a Saturday night, Black Twitter went crazy. This was 2008. He was, he made a faux pas verbally, and then the White House asked him to leave, and he tendered his resignation on the Saturday night. So I would say that the climate change conversation is a difficult, multi-layered conversation. Even yesterday on a Black station here in Philadelphia, there was an argument with the editor of Philly magazine, Ernest Owens, who said, we don't, meaning Black people, and Charles Ellison, the host of the show, they were at the Laborers Council live. They were doing a live show at Laborers Council. And Charles was saying, well, environmental justice, that's what's really, and Ernest Owens, the new editor of Philly magazine, said, no, we don't. We Black people don't care about, basically no environmental justice. We care about cops killing us. We care about, and so I'm saying that to say that there's a lot of people in this country that felt that America should not be, I'm not saying it was, maybe it was 40%, but a lot more people, he's exposed that a lot of people in this country don't get climate change. They don't care about climate change. It's a very difficult thing to get people to come out and show up and be, not when I say difficult, I mean, general public. I'm not saying, the activists and the people that care. It's a small percentage. So a lot of Americans like, good, we don't have to, we don't have to be part of that.
Yeah, but I was going with the fact that he has destroyed so many things like that, like the climate accords that would not only help the U.S., that's for the world. We should belong to that group for our own sake and to contribute to collaborate with the rest of the world. The same thing with WHO, the World Health Organization, that he has practically disowned. He doesn't want to have anything to do with it. Things like that. Most of the diplomats, the professional, the career diplomats, have to be upset at the way he has put all.
Hundreds of them have written op-ed pieces, and hundreds. The thing that you're part of what I would like to have the audience take away with your conversation is that yes, he's done these things, but let's be clear that even we see in this election that he has support, and apparently he has a lot of support for his attitudes. And even though it's the destruction, it's detrimental to people's lives, there are people that are willing on this planet and in this country to roll the dice and not care what happens to them, their children, their neighbor. So that's a problem in this country. We have selfishness, and a selfishness that's been exposed. While Donald Trump has done X, Y, and Z, what I'm saying, Fernando, I think that the audience needs to be clear. When we leave Philadelphia, like we were in kind of a bubble of, brotherly affection and sisterly, brotherly love and sisterly affection. Around the country, not so much.
Yeah, but the very call to arms of the Trumpists, make America great again.
Yes.
That in itself is already an insult.
Absolutely, and it doesn't make sense. I am totally agreement with you that none of this makes sense. It's in opposition to what should happen, and it's going to take years to undo. Although I will say that, and that's my point, I think that some of this needed to happen to be exposed I don't think the average American was up on foreign policy like we are now. Obama tried to make it, tried to talk about it. You know, people, it was like a professor. It's like, oh, okay, professor, fine, whatever. But Trump has
Yeah, but
shown.
I'm sorry. Yeah, Obama must have been a good teacher of some American justice, but he and his team were very inexperienced in foreign policy.
I agree.
To allow the Venezuelan dictator, Hugo Chavez, to approach Obama with a book about the open veins of Latin America, a very left-wing author. If they had known any better, this guy would not have been anywhere near Obama. Obama received the book and said, "Thank you for insulting me."
Isn't that the problem with liberalism and left wingism? I mean, I think that's the weakness, right? They'll take on somebody who's been willing to take on different. It's difficult to be a hawk in foreign policy and be a Democrat.
Yeah, it is.
So we have so that's a crack right there, Fernando. That let's imagine if Trump was a Democrat, he could have done some of the same things under the policies that I need to make sure that we're okay. And we, Democrats, we always look out for you. And he could have done the same thing could have happened on the left.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So there's exposures. Well, I think the part of it is you as a teacher know people don't want to sit there and actually do the work to learn. And that's what this to me has taught this country. If you want this country to win, you want this country to work, you're going to have to sit on your butt, do some reading, get educated, and take some time and be patient and get out there and do the work.
Yeah. Well, here's one note, since Pennsylvania could play such a big role right now.
Yes.
Because of the many ballots, there were 2.5 million ballots counted. And whenever the voters, some of them were given a chance to fix errors and ensure their votes were counted, it depended largely on where they lived. So that inconsistency is now at the heart of the lawsuit that was filed by Republican candidates and voters seeking for these counties to set aside any ballots that voters were allowed to fix. So how about that? So
it's funny though that county like Monmouth County, well, they think it's going to be predominantly Republican, Democrat. Yeah. I think that it could really affect Trump. I think that
maybe that backfired.
Yeah, I think that there are definitely more folks whose ballots that actually get counted. To your point, I know a friend of mine, her father and her mother were in Bucks County, and they told them apparently Bucks County has some kind of referendum. They told them to come back to the voting place to refill out their ballot because the referendum wasn't on the original ballot. The husband is very pale, looks almost white, and the wife is darker skin complexion. And so the husband went to the sheriff deputy on duty and said, "I'm here for the sheriff." Okay, go in. The wife went in and she showed them the same. The husband didn't have his letter. She showed the letter to the Bucks County folk, and they snatched the letter from her and told her they have to investigate this. We don't know anything about this. So her vote probably won't get counted. So she's not going to be one of the people that had to rewrite her ballot. Yeah. So while her husband may be challenged, but my point is that he would be considered white. So okay. Typically he would have voted for Trump.
Here we are. At the end of the day, we still don't know what happened last night. We don't know where we
do know, Fernando. We do know what happened. We had huge turnout.
Yeah, we know what happened, but we don't know the final numbers.
Not yet, but we will. We will. Let's let the audience know. Let's be, we're part of the media that says, again, have patience. They're counting them. It's constitutionally allowed. This will not stop, and that's that.
Okay, Martin, thank you for calling Usala Media, the roundtable. We had Dario Belot on our program today, and Martin Pratt, and we're all worried about what's happening with Pennsylvania. What's going to happen with the final count? So,
and Philly, did Philly have the voter turnout they thought we were going to have?
I know.
We'll see.
Disappointing. I don't know.
Well, maybe we'll see. We got to get the count. Let's just have this conversation again Friday.
Okay, we run out of time here, Martin. Thank you very much for calling.
Bye-bye.
Señor Felipe de la Media, les agradecemos mucho su atención en el día de hoy. Les habló Fernando Mendez, Christian Lacey controlando el tablero. Los esperamos hasta la próxima. Go Biden.